Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. This article we have this morning is really going to play in well to what we've been talking about, and how I've been trying to hammer home the fact that there is a lot of dirty, deceitful, gross money floating around in the American political system. Now, I'm sure that's the case for elsewhere. I don't live there. I can't speak for elsewhere. What I will say is this. Guys like Leon Black fund both sides of the aisle, fund both parties. And in return, well, when those people are in their offices, they're expected to make sure that the laws that they write are favorable to people like Leon Black, that there's some loopholes for them to exploit, that there are some back doors for them to exit out of if they ever get in trouble. What do you think? They're just donating this money because that's the guy that they want to win? No. When they give this money to these politicians, it's because they believe that these politicians can do something for them in return. Now, it might not be an outright bribe, right? But it might be a favorable ruling, or packing a bit of pork into a bill, or, there are plenty of ways to skin the cat, as they say. And people on both sides of the aisle have surely mastered the art. We're talking about serious money that gets poured into people who then have the audacity to get up there on their ivory tower and yell down at the rest of us. It's absurd, frankly. And taking it a step further, this just plays right into my point that I was making the other night, how I don't believe that any outside money should ever be accepted or should be used by any candidate running for Senate or Congress. That money should all come from within the state, so that that person who gets elected, I know this is going to be a big shocker, is only accountable to his or her constituents, and is not accountable to these bagmen like Leon Black. And I tell you what, if these politicians that are planning on running at some point, or if any of you are planning on running at some point, I think that would be a fantastic platform to run on. I think people in your state would appreciate that shit. And I think that people in your state would be hyped up and fired up to vote for a candidate who promises to only take in-state money, no matter how little it is. Because when you have people like Leon Black, and you have people like Glenn Dubin, and you have insert other American oligarch here, manipulating our financial system by buying their way into local politics via senators and congressmen and attorney generals, it's not good. That's not the way it should be. And then these people that we send to D.C. that are supposedly representing us are not doing that. They're representing their bagmen. They're representing the people on K Street. They're representing people like Leon Black. And you know what the truth is? These people don't care. It's all about raising obscene amounts of money in politics these days. And you really think that we're supposed to believe all of that money that you raise from people like Leon Black is going to your campaigns anyway? How much of that finds its way into the pocket of these candidates, or these congressmen or congresswomen, or these bureaucrats? I'm sure a whole hell of a lot of it. And that's just the unfortunate truth of the matter, folks. When you have this kind of money coming in from people like Leon Black pouring into states where there's only 3 or 4 million people living in the state, it's an absurd way for somebody like him to manipulate the politics. And it should not be allowed. I don't think that one single dollar should ever come from somebody like Leon Black and go to somebody who is looking to become a senator or is looking to hold their Senate seat. Unless, of course, it's from the state that Leon Black lives in. Then, hey, look, whatever you do in your state, if you're a resident of that state, fine. I'm talking about outside money, money that pours in from New York to, say, Nevada. Unacceptable. It is unacceptable, and I don't feel like the states, all of the states, get the proper representation when that occurs. And I think it's a big problem right along with term limits. So today, Forbes, or should I say yesterday, Forbes had an article out about some of the people that received money from Leon Black. We're going to dive into that article, and we're going to see which ones of these grifting-ass thieves that we have sent to Washington, D.C. and elsewhere have received money from Leon Black. And then the question will become, are they going to return it? This article is from Forbes. Headline, Leaders in both parties received money from Leon Black, billionaire caught up in Epstein scandal. This article was authored by Lizette Voitko. Leon Black, the billionaire chairman, chief executive, and co-founder of Apollo Global Management, donated at least $100,000 to mostly Republican senatorial campaigns since 2019. Isn't that nice? So why is Leon Black so worried about senatorial campaigns? Why is he so worried about people who are running for Senate? Just because? That's far less than he gave to the political causes ahead of the 2006 election, based on a Forbes analysis of contributions reported by the Federal Election Commission. Look, Leon Black has serious ties to people like Jared Kushner. I'm sure that him and Donald Trump are homies. And I'm sure that all of the other people who have received money from him are going to be looking for ways to give it back at this point. You would think, right? Black has been under scrutiny recently for his ties to the dead, disgraced financier, pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein. The ties have begun to pose problems for his massive private equity firm. Oh, isn't this nice? There are several people who we're going to get to who have received money from him, Democrats and Republicans alike. It's just unbelievable to me that these people would accept this money, considering we all have known about Leon Black's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein for quite some time now. This is not something new. This is not a revelation that the Times broke, okay? This is something that we have known for quite some time. And the fact that these people would take the money from this guy, knowing his ties to Jeffrey Epstein, it's repugnant. It's the same way I felt about good old Pete Buttigieg taking money from Glenn Dubin. Oh, but he gave it back. That's not the point. The point is, who's in charge of vetting these donors? GOP heavyweights are among the recipients of Black's donations, including Senate Majority Leader Cocaine Mitch McConnell himself, $5,600. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, $5,600. And Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, $2,800. About 33% of his donations went to moderate Democrats like Chris Coons of Delaware and Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. So, Cocaine Mitch, Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, Chris Coons, and Mark Warner. What are you going to do with that money that was donated to you by Leon Black? I would prefer if none of the politicians in America or, people running for office were tainted with ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, obviously, it'll be, well, we had no idea that Mr. Black was entangled with Mr. Epstein. That'll be the excuse from all of them. Meanwhile, these are the same people that want us to believe that they should be writing laws that are going to keep me or you out of jail or put us in jail. These are the people that we want in charge, huh? But they had no idea, and they couldn't vet who Leon Black was or what his associations were or anything like that. They just accepted the money, hand over fist. Do you know why? Because it's all about greed, and it's all about that out-of-state money, folks. Let's get that out-of-state money into Arkansas. What the hell does Leon Black care about Arkansas or South Carolina? I mean, really? It's political kabuki, and I am tired of it. Blacks' donations in 2019 and 2020 decreased by some 80% compared to 2015 and 2016, when Black gave about $570,000. Well, that's interesting. So his donations were clipped by 80%. I wonder why. I wonder why he stopped donating. Very interesting stuff. Now, probably had something to do with the same reason most of these big Republican bundled bagmen bounced out. A lot of them wanted nothing to do with Trump. We saw a lot of the traditional Republican donors really turn their cheek the other way and hold their noses over Trump. And who knows, maybe Black is one of those kind of dudes. But to me, I think that Leon Black is the kind of guy that understands that the presidential race really doesn't mean shit. He understands that these senators and these Congress people, where he puts, a majority of his money, where he donates a majority of his money to both sides of the aisle, well, he knows that those are the people that are writing the laws. Those are the people that really have an impact on his life, not some president that's there for 4 or 8 years and who is managed behind the scenes by these money men. And that's all the presidents, by the way, okay? Every single one of them. The majority of those funds were directed to 2 super PACs, $250,000 to Senate Majority PAC, which is the super PAC supporting Democrats in the Senate, and $150,000 to Congressional Leadership Fund, which is the super PAC supporting Republicans in the House. Oh, pretty sly, huh? $250,000 to the Senate Majority PAC. Then that money will get distributed to various states. Again, outside dark money, tainting state races. How many of these professors, how many of these lawyers, how many of these doctors would be elected in your home states and sent to D.C. if it was reliant only on the people of your state to fund the race and then to vote in the race? I am sure not too many of them. So, like I always say, it is time to vote these incumbents out. And then it is time for some strict guidelines. No outside money into Senate or congressional races, and term limits. If we can get those 2 things done, and you see them fighting tooth and nail against stuff like this, by the way, if we can get those 2 things done, we can make sure that we have a fighting chance as a society. Without that stuff, forget it. The political class is going to drag us all under with them. His spouse, Deborah Black, a theatrical producer and Melanoma Research Alliance co-founder, gave less compared to her husband over the past year, with $78,000 going to candidates on both sides of the aisle. Black and his wife gave to many of the same congressional candidates, but about 43% of Deborah Black's donations went to Democrats. Like her husband, Deborah Black contributed more overall in the 2016 cycle, but not by much, at $106,500. So that's how they play the game, right? They show up, they're like, all right, look, so I'm gonna donate to the Republican senators. You donate to the Democratic congressmen, and then, we'll make sure that we're covered on both ends. When these guys are writing laws, we'll be looked at favorably by both sides. And so the game goes. These people, with all of this money, this dirty-ass, dark money that keeps pouring into these races, are such an impediment on actual freedom and free choice that it's not even funny. I mean, how much money gets poured into these states by people like Leon Black? And Leon Black's just one of these mega donors. $250,000 to a Senate PAC committee. It's just absurd. It is absolutely absurd. And these people, like Leon Black, like Glenn Dubin, have no sense of right and wrong. They operate on a different level than the rest of us, because all of this money that we're talking about, that they donate to the very people who write the laws. Black's political donations tapered off amid an ever-expanding public relations crisis. Black, whose net worth Forbes estimates at $7.7 billion with a B, is under fire for transferring over $50 million to Epstein after he was convicted in 2008 of soliciting prostitution from an underage girl. So, all these people that received money from him, Mitch McConnell, Coons, and the rest, you better donate that money somewhere. And then it's time to start explaining how you ended up taking money from Leon Black, considering what the hell is going on right now. This is not a news story. This is not something that just occurred. This is something that's been ongoing. This is something that a quick Google search for any of these people who accepted this money would have shown them. And I'll tell you what, I bet a bunch of them knew, and they did not care. That conviction became the subject of a November 2018 Miami Herald investigation, which found that Epstein negotiated what many believe to be an overly lenient plea deal with U.S. attorneys after dozens of underage girls had accused him of sexual abuse. Black faced questions about his relationship with Epstein in July 2019 when the New York Post first reported that Epstein served on the board of the Black Foundation for 4 years following his 2008 conviction. So you mean to tell me that the New York Post could break this, the New York Post can find this, but all of these so-called rulers of the free world, all of these so-called statesmen couldn't figure it out? What a bunch of bozos. This is who we have entrusted our future to? This is who we have entrusted our safety to? Black has deep regret for his ties to Epstein, according to an October 12th letter to investors, and stressed that the disgraced financier, pedophile, never did any business with Apollo. Again, I find that to be ludicrous. Leon Black is Apollo, and Apollo is Leon Black. Come on, man. Black's ties to Epstein have begun to have financial ramifications for Apollo management. One of the country's biggest pension funds, the Pennsylvania Public School Employees Retirement System, said in an emailed statement to Forbes that it would not make any new investments in Apollo. We talked about this previously, and it's a huge deal. It's really a big deal, and I would not be shocked, like I said when we were discussing this, if other public pensions pulled back as well, because this is just a huge cloud hanging over your head. And if these public pensions are pulling back, don't you think the politicians would be falling all over themselves to give this money back? But no, they have to wait for a Forbes story to talk about it. They have to wait for me to talk about it. They have to wait for you to get mad about it. They just can't do the right thing. The decision was made the day after the New York Times revealed the $50 million Epstein bombshell on October 12th, fund spokesman Steve Essick told Forbes. That $50 million looms large. There's no way that I believe that this was for some sort of charitable works. What the $50 million was for, I have no idea, folks. I won't even begin to speculate. But I do not think it's for what they said it was for, that's for sure. And I think that it's probably dirty money. And Cambridge Associates, a leading investment consulting firm, reportedly might stop recommending Apollo to its clients. Representatives for Cambridge Associates declined Forbes' request to confirm this. So there is definitely that talk. We've heard that from several sources. I've talked to several people who have confirmed that Cambridge has definitely pulled back at this point as they await to see what occurs. But I don't think that our politicians have that sort of leeway. I think that they need to come out and condemn this shit right away. And if they've taken any money from Leon Black, it needs to be donated. It needs to be given back. They need to do something with it because this is not a good look. Black wrote in a July 2019 email to employees that the money he paid Epstein was for professional services to my family partnership and related family entities involving tax, estate planning, and philanthropic advice. Again, why would Leon Black, who is worth $7.7 billion with a B, need Jeffrey Epstein's punk ass to help him with anything. Maybe pairing his socks. Maybe driving him around the city. Financial advice? I'm not buying it for a second. Tax advice? Estate planning? Really? Jeffrey Epstein's the best option you got there, huh, Mr. Black? It is all absurd that they would think that we would believe this. Reports surfaced this week that Black requested on Tuesday that the Apollo board hire an outside law firm to review his business dealings with Epstein. According to the Wall Street Journal, the review is Black's attempt to clear his name and would hopefully result in renewed investor confidence. Yeah, I'm sorry, but your independent review is not going to cut it. All right? That's not going to take anyone's eyes off of your role in Jeffrey Epstein's behavior. That's not going to take anyone's eye off of your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. If you really want to do the right thing, why don't you speak with the investigators? Why don't you call the lawyers for the survivors and sit down with those lawyers and talk to them? Maybe you know something and you don't know that you know it. But one thing is for sure, you're not going to avoid this, and this is not going to go away after some measly ass outside investigation. We've seen how these outside investigations go. Look at the New York Academy of Arts and look at how they had to send out an apology to Maria afterwards. These outside law firms, they're hired by these people. Do you really think that they want to give their employers bad news about what they found? Or are they going to, fudge some shit? Sorry, I don't have faith in the integrity of most of these lawyers, all right? Sorry, that's just how I feel. Representatives for Black and Apollo did not respond to questions from Forbes about his political giving and what he hopes the outside review of his business dealings with Epstein might accomplish. The political giving is unacceptable. Again, folks, I'm going to drive this point home. I don't think that any outside money should come into these races, especially money from people like Leon Black. Why is he so concerned about what the hell happens in Arkansas? Meanwhile, Apollo co-founder Mark Rowan and his wife, Carolyn, made at least $1 million in political donations this year to the Trump Victory PAC, a joint fundraising effort between the president's re-election campaign and the Republican National Committee, outstripping Black. Look, again, when it comes to the presidential campaign, if people want to waste their money on that, I really don't give a shit one way or the other. I believe that the presidential elections are just a waste of time for the most part. Nothing ever changes. They're just another face that comes in and then another face that leaves. The real problem are these people behind the scenes with all this money pouring it into these races at a local level, in my opinion. I am truly convinced of that at this point. They're not going to get me with their political kabuki anymore. They're not going to get me with their political theater or their WWE style of politics. Because I'm not falling for it. This is all garbage on the national stage. Whoever the president is, it's the same story, right? How many times do we see a president get elected, and then right after the president get elected, his whole entire cabinet and staff is filled out with people from the financial sector, over and over and over again? And it's rather apparent when you know what to look for, and when you're really looking for that kind of stuff, it's rather apparent that there is a serious problem with this sort of money pouring into our political system. NBC News reported Wednesday that back in April, Rowan emailed Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor, seeking relaxed coronavirus restrictions that would benefit Apollo. Kushner lands squarely in the middle of this, with Apollo reportedly dispersing a $184 million loan to his real estate company in 2017. Yeah, I'm sure that had nothing to do with the fact that he's Donald Trump's son-in-law. I mean, nepotism never happens in this neck of the woods, right? None of these people ever benefit from their relationships. Just like we shouldn't believe anything about Hunter Biden. No, it's all BS. It is such a joke how much in the pale the legacy media is for our ruling class on both sides of the aisle. If they really cared and if they really gave a shit the way they say they do, they would start right at the very dark heart of all of it. And that, my friends, is the financial sector. And people like Leon Black and the rest of the scuzzbags would be forbidden from pouring their disgusting, dirty money into every single state election, thus having control, at least when it comes to distributing the money to these politicians for their reelection, etc., over the decisions that these politicians are making. It is a big problem, and we see it here, and we see it as they dump money into both sides of the aisle. It's not about them being part of any sort of tribalistic party the way that they want everybody else to be. These people aren't at each other's throats. They're behind the scenes clanking their glasses and laughing about the transfer of wealth, while you and I are being told that we should hate each other. All I could say is this. From where I'm sitting and from my perspective and my opinion, it is time to end all of this dirty money in American politics. It is time to stop all of this outside money dumping into states. And it is time to hold these politicians accountable for where they receive this money from. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. And to all of you who have donated to the PayPal and to the show in general, thank you very much. All right, folks, I'll be back later on this evening and we will pick back up.